So for today's movie review, I'll be reviewing the movie Meet the Feebles. And if I had to describe this movie in a nutshell, it's one of two things. One, it's a dark comical satire of the Muppets, and two, it's the Muppets from Hell. But that's not my main reason for reviewing the movie. It was directed by none other than Peter Jackson himself. That's right, the man who would later make films such as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Hobbit trilogy, and the King Kong Remake, made fucking weird shit like this. Now, rumor has it that ever since Peter Jackson made the Lord of the Rings trilogy, this movie, along with Bad Taste, have gained a huge cult following. So, how does Peter Jackson's earlier work like this compared to some of his later work? So, the central plot of Meet the Feebles is essentially about this weird cast of characters who try to put on a Muppet-esque like show within 12 hours. And while that's going on, there's a lot of subplots that happen too, like, oh, you have the new guy who's trying to hook up with one of the chorus girls, a drug dealing, a character who thinks he's got AIDS, another character who's experiencing Vietnam flashbacks, and a couple other subplots. Like, if I had to put this movie in a nutshell, imagine if the 2011 Muppet movie had the sense of humor of that of South Park. So in terms of what I liked about the movie, I do like the puppets they made for the movie. There's quite a bit of variety, although most of it just comes down to most of them being hand puppets versus those of people just wearing full costumes. Granted, I didn't really think the people wearing the full costumes were that great, but they add variety to the movie. And the movie itself is just so bizarre, I don't even know where to start. And like I said earlier, it is basically a dark, comical satire of the Muppets, so that's funny in of itself. There's a lot of subplots going on, but there's enough going on within each subplot to keep the viewer entertained. In terms of what I disliked about the movie, going back to the subplots, most of them do relate back to the main story, while others I thought were irrelevant. Case in point, there's this character who's telling his backstory of going to Vietnam. Like, the scene itself could have been its own movie, but why I found it to be so irrelevant, the character telling the story. If it was like a main character or like a supporting character, it would have been fine. But the character telling the story is minor, and he doesn't really do much. So why have that in there? I'm not really sure. And most of the puppets, I'm confused as to what they're supposed to be. Like, there's one character which I thought was a dog, and it turned out it was a mouse. I was like, what? I don't see the resemblance. And another example is the character telling the Vietnam flashback. I thought he was supposed to be like a lizard, but he's a frog. I mean, I could kind of see the resemblance, but I totally thought it was a freaking lizard, so there's that. And the movie is not for everybody. Like, there's some parts of the movie that are so gross that's funny, while there's other parts of the movie that are so gross that it's disgusting, so their humor might not be for everybody. As for the main character, Robert the Hedgehog, he's essentially a newcomer to the Meet the Feebles show. He's shy, he's naive, he's got a Spanish accent, and he falls in love with one of the chorus girls, Lucy, and that's really about it for his character. As for the next character, Lucy, like Robert, she's a newcomer to the Meet the Feebles show, and she's essentially the love interest of Robert. And when she first meets Robert, or, when they first meet each other, Robert is, for him, it's basically love at first sight, while Lucy, the feeling isn't mutual. Although, as the movie progresses, she becomes his love interest, and she's a damsel in distress. At least at the end of the movie. As for Arthur, he's essentially the manager of the Meet the Feebles, and he's one of the few characters in the film to be nice to Robert, since all the other cast members treat him like shit. And in general, the character is actually pretty cool, so there's that. As for Heidi, or Heidi, I have no idea how to pronounce the character's name, but she's essentially the main star of the Meet the Feebles show, and she's a very, talented actress and singer, but behind the scenes, she's very hungry in a sense that she eats a lot of cakes, and she's kind of crazy because she's bipolar, so there's that. As for the main villain, Mr. Bletch, he's basically a cold-hearted, greedy, manipulative walrus. And he's essentially the guy behind the Meet the Feebles show. And while he's not working on the Meet the Feebles, he's essentially a drug dealer. So, for my final verdict of Meet the Feebles, I don't know what's stranger, Peter Jackson making weird-ass movies like this, or the fact that Hollywood thought it was a good idea for someone like Peter Jackson to make great movies like The Lord of the Rings. I don't know which, but in terms of the actual movie itself, as fucked up as the movie is, I kind of recommend it. Only because it'll give you a general idea of what Peter Jackson's early movies were like, as long as you have the stomach for it. And so, before I give my final review, what did everyone else have to say about Meet the Feebles? It looks like the movie got average to okay reviews, and so for my final verdict of Meet the Feebles, I give it a 3 out of 5. So, what's your favorite Peter Jackson movie? And see you later.